Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. How are you doing today? Ready for some new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one, about OP's fiance's stepmother, who doesn't allow OP or her baby in the house until OP gets a paternity test. Listen to the story to find out why, and of course to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. For context, my fiancé, 28 male, and I, 26 female, have been together on and off for 5 years. We have one son together, and in August, we welcomed our second baby into the world. Shortly in 2022, we had broken up and seen other people, but then got back together in October. In November, my father, 56 male, passed away, and it was a rocky time for me and for us. In December, I found out I was pregnant. During my pregnancy, his stepmom, 55 female, continually asked if the baby was my fiance's. Several times he said it was. During the time we were broken up, his stepmom encouraged me to see other people, but when we got back together I had stopped. Now fast forward to now, the baby has been born, but his stepmom won't allow me or the baby in the house until I get a paternity test. However, my fiancé and other son are welcome to go over there. I told my fiancé that if she is there, he shouldn't go over there at all, because we are supposed to be getting married, and that makes us one unit. He got very angry and said I was stopping him from seeing his father, 58 male. His stepmom travels for work and is there very sporadically, and I told him of course he could spend time with his father when she wasn't there, and his father is always welcome in our home, but that he should hold his ground when she is home and refuse to go over. The conversation ended with me feeling like I forced it. I feel as though this is something that shouldn't even be a question, as we are supposed to be married. I feel as if she is treating me and our newborn son horribly, and he asked how. My partner said I'm going to ruin the holidays and asked me when I was going to let it go. I feel as though this isn't something you just let go, and I'm very hurt all around. I feel as though my fiancé should be sticking up for us. I'm also hurt by this demand of a paternity test. I decided to go no contact with the stepmom, but my partner still plans on being around her, even though she has isolated me and our son. Well, me personally would just do the paternity test for the sake of having peace in the family. Also, looking at the percentage of men unknowingly raising children that are not theirs biologically is astonishing. Given the break in OP's relationship, I can understand how being worried about getting emotionally connected to a grandchild that could be taken away if OP and her fiancé break up again, and it turns out not to be his biological child. But I also understand why OP feels bad. But sometimes you just need to take a higher road, I guess. And now let's see if the community agrees with me. The IT Guy 1968 says, "Soft, you're the a-hole. Just do the test and settle the matter. If you were not sleeping with anyone during the short breakup, then you already know the answer and have nothing to be worried about." Chance Ad 3606 says, "Everyone sucks here. She sucks for A, encouraging you to see other people, and B, demanding a paternity test before you or your kid can go in the house for holidays. But why won't you just get a paternity test? Who cares if you're offended? Swallow your pride and get one. Then, when you get the results that it's your husband's kid, you can shove them in her face, and your husband doesn't have to feel like he's being forced to choose one side or the other. You're the a-hole for putting your husband in this situation, instead of just agreeing to a paternity test." C. Magiscula says, "Not the a-hole. Tell him you'll get a paternity test, but when that comes back, you'll be splitting up. His stepmother is way out of bounds." My 58 female son, 36 male, is marrying his mistress, 44 female, 6 months after he divorced his first wife. For context, my son and his ex-wife, whom we will call Lindsay, met and started dating when they were freshmen in high school. They got married when they were 26 and were married for 10 years. I loved Lindsay. She was so amazing and sweet. My son is a surgeon, and she always supported him. My son divorced his wife 6 months ago. He was cheating on her with another woman named Kimberly. I found out when I visited my son's house, and I saw Kimberly leaving his house. I told my husband, but it turned out he always knew about the affair. I asked him why he didn't tell me, and he said it wasn't his business, and it's not his secret to tell. He said this was their marriage, not ours, and they needed to figure it out. I told Lindsay about the affair, and when Lindsay confronted him, my son told her he wanted a divorce. They divorced, and my son and Kimberly got engaged. Their wedding is in 2 weeks, and I was invited, but I don't know if I want to go. Lindsay was very heartbroken over the affair. She was sad and cried for a long time, and I don't know if she has moved on yet. I'm still upset that my husband didn't tell me, and I told my son I don't know if I want to attend his wedding, and he replied, "If you don't want to support your son, then don't." My husband is attending the wedding. I told him that I didn't want him to, but he said I'm going to my son's wedding. I don't like that he cheated, but it happened, and there isn't anything we can do about it. It's best to move on. What should I do? Well, it's OP's choice if she doesn't want to attend, and she thinks it's against her principles and morals. But she also needs to think how she's going to communicate with her son in the future, especially if her son has kids with his mistress. Won't she be attending family gatherings, birthdays, etc.? I think there are some things for OP to think about and consider before deciding not to attend the wedding. Of course, what her son did is not right, but she needs to think about the future as well. And now let's hear the community's opinion on the matter. Imaginary Son 7 says, "I'm sorry to say this, but your son is an absolute jerk and a-hole. I'm not saying that it's your fault or anything, but some people are just like that. I'm so sorry for everything that Lindsay must be going through. It must have been absolutely terrible for her. And you know what? I appreciate you are a woman of strong principles. You didn't see that it was your son doing wrong. You just went there and helped Lindsay. You are a very good mother-in-law. But in all seriousness, don't attend the wedding if you don't support your son's infidelity. Instead, if you can, just spend some more time with Lindsay so that she can mentally recuperate. I hope that makes sense. All the best. Listen to your heart and your principles." Siren Savior says, "Don't go. Stick to your moral principles. Be kind and everything. However, you don't have to support this selfish act by attending a ceremony that's celebrating something very wrong. Perhaps you'll develop a relationship with the new daughter later, but it's still fresh and a betrayal to your other daughter. Chances are this new marriage won't even last anyway. It's built on lies and betrayal. Your son shouldn't be indulged and patted on the back for his treachery. It's okay for him to feel the consequences of his actions. He's a grown man." Deranged Kitsune says, "Your husband has some very concerning thoughts on infidelity. Knowing about an affair and not exposing or condemning it means that he condoned and supported it. However, tacitly some might consider that. A person lying to their spouse, the adult that is supposed to be closest to them in their life, is a huge deal. It's an emotional and physical betrayal. That his attitude is, it's best to move on, and apparently having no feelings of disappointment that the son he raised was not a better man and husband, would cause me to wonder where such an attitude came from. As for attending your son's wedding, if asked, you can always say, 'I've done that once already.'" I'm 32 male, well off. My wife, 33 female, is also well off. We don't have any kids, but we do financially support my younger sister, 27 female, in the form of allowing her to stay in a house we own, not the house my wife and I live in, for mostly free. Our parents are no longer alive. My sister pays about $30 a week in rent, which goes towards rates, bills, etc. It has been like this since about 4 years ago when my sister and her partner at the time were in a car crash, and her partner died while my sister was left partially paralyzed, limited right arm, leg control, meaning she had to leave her job in construction. She has since gone through extensive physiotherapy and now has a job as a PA. She makes around $550 a week. She could afford to pay market rent, but we don't ask her to, as we don't need the money. She started seeing a new guy, 24 male, about a year ago, and he has recently moved in with her. At a barbecue last weekend, he asked how my wife and I had been able to afford to buy, and how he was struggling to pay rent. This confused me, because I wouldn't have thought he'd be paying anything to live with my sister. He told me he was paying her $150 a week in rent, which was apparently what she had told him was half the rent she paid. I was shocked, and told him that my sister was only asked to pay $30 a week. He became upset, and left the barbecue to go sit in his car. I confronted my sister, and she said that it was only fair he paid market rent to live with her, since he'd have to anywhere else. I told her I was upset that she had lied to him about the amount of rent she was paying, and had been essentially profiting off her lie. I asked her to leave the barbecue, and said that if she was going to continue charging him to live with her, then we would be increasing her rent to the $300 a week that she told him she was paying. She got incredibly upset, and called me unsupportive and selfish before leaving. Am I the a-hole here? As far as I can see it, she was taking advantage of this boy to pay her rent, plus make an extra $110 a week. My wife thinks I shouldn't have threatened to increase her rent, and I agree, but I'm very upset with her lies. Update. A couple brief things before I go to bed. 1. I know for almost certain that there didn't need to be a concern about her boyfriend living with her rent-free as a leech. I'm very good friends with his older brother, and prior to moving in with my sister, this boy was living at home for free, except for bills. And by moving in with my sister, he has also moved almost an hour away from both his uni and his job. 2. My wife has gotten legal advice today because we were concerned that this could turn ugly between my sister and her boyfriend. Tomorrow we will be drafting a rental agreement for the property. Previously, the agreement was a casual one with no written backing. That will include requiring my sister to pay market rent for a house that size in the area, as well as transferring the utilities for the house into her name. If she refuses, then we will be asking her to leave because… 3. Today, my sister has sent both me and my wife vicious emails and texts, calling us all sorts of things and threatening to sue us for emotional harm. We've also been contacted by her now ex, apologizing extensively for moving in without our permission and not doing due diligence, and also informing us that he intends on taking my sister through small claims court, as over the last couple of months, not only had he been paying $150 a week in rent, but he had also given my sister $600 as bond and $70 a month in bills. Obviously, this is a very significant amount of money, considering my sister's blatant lies to him, of which he has also sent us several deeply distressing email screenshots where my sister lies to him about who owns the house, how much bills, rent, bond is, sent him a fraudulent tenancy agreement with a forged landlord signature, and lied about why he couldn't meet the landlord. OP's sister manipulated her boyfriend into paying rent that is 5 times what she pays OP. OP is absolutely in the right for calling her out and telling her boyfriend the truth. As for the threat of an increased rent, I would absolutely increase her rent. She lied about paying $300 so she could con her boyfriend out of money. Might as well make her pay that much. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Strike Match says, not the a-hole. What your sister is doing is incredibly greedy and dishonest, and she deserves whatever consequences that come her way. Magstar222 says, I was all set up to be like mind your business OP from the title, but hoo-ah! She's being real shady, not the a-hole. 30 years ago, my husband and his wife divorced because of an affair his wife had been having for 5 years up to that point. They already had 2 children and a third coming. After the divorce, my husband was broke. The ex took the kids, the house, but husband negotiated with her and pretty much gave her everything in exchange for him not having to pay alimony. That was a smart move on his part, because not long after we met, he took up a position working in IT. He clambered up the ladder and soon, within 15 years, became a regional IT director within a large company. He earned a lot and soon started investing smartly into several areas of his interest. Overall, he made about $10 million for himself, and only to himself, since we had a prenup. Meanwhile, all of this, he had been attempting to contact his children, and all denied him. The husband did not blame the children, as they probably had a terrible image of him given by their mother. But nevertheless, he gave up on having a relationship with them because none tried to make it work. Not long ago, my husband had passed away due to an illness and left me and my 2 children the inheritance. I inherited $8 million, and my children inherited $1 million each, and a hefty amount in shares. I was saddened by his passing, since I loved him dearly, but then I received a text from an unknown number, then from 2 others. Long story short, their mother broke down from guilt after hearing of my husband's death and told her children that she had lied this whole time. Now they are trying to contact me and attempting to say that they deserve a share of the inheritance. They are telling me how much they didn't know about him, and had they known, they certainly would have let him back into our lives. I understand that they were under an illusion made by their mother, but I feel like they don't deserve a cent. So would I be the a-hole? Juneda Slam 1983 says, not the a-hole. Will them getting a chunk of money make up for anything? It's just greed. If he died dirt poor, they wouldn't have cared. We Feed the Fire says, not the a-hole. His children are adults and made their own choices to believe their mother. Your husband made his choice to leave you and your children an inheritance and to exclude his prior children, who, again, made their own choice not to contact him. They're doing so now out of greed. You owe them nothing. Panda2622 says, not the a-hole. I find it hard to believe the mother has now told the children the truth about your husband out of guilt. She most definitely told them so they could get a hold of some assets. If the will only states yourself and your children will be getting anything, I don't see why you should have to give them anything. The money won't make up for the 30 years they didn't have a father, or their kids didn't have a grandfather. To all but the youngest, your husband would have been a distant memory, and they didn't know him, or make an effort to get to know him as an individual to be able to benefit from his success. It's the exact same as if he were alive and they came back to him just to ask him for $250K loans, etc. They see him as a bank, not a father or a man they look up to. I also don't like the comments that are saying, well, you have $8 million, you can spare $1 million. People aren't entitled to your things just because you have more. If he were at rock bottom, would they have reached out then? Doubtful. I, female 27, have a younger sister, 25, who has 3 kids, female 6, female 3, and male 2, with her husband, 26. Me and my sister used to be close, but drifted apart when our mother, who was a single mom, passed away about 10 years ago. I immediately ended up going to college and barely came home, and she ended up meeting her now husband when I was away. For the time they've been together, I've only met her husband a handful of times, but I honestly have no opinion about him. Sometimes my sister talks about him, but that's just it. Anyway, my sister recently found out that her husband has been cheating on her with a 19-year-old girl, and I guess she figured out that whenever he stayed home late, he was meeting up with her. From what she told me, he's sending a lot of money to her and even bought her gifts from lavish shops. I, of course, comforted her because she started crying and telling me that she didn't know what to do, as she's a stay-at-home mom and she heavily relies on her husband. I honestly didn't say much, as I've never been great at comforting people in situations I've never been in, until she asked if she and her kids could stay with me. I immediately said no and apologized. She ended up asking why and telling me she didn't have anywhere else to stay and she couldn't stay with her husband any longer. I ended up explaining that I didn't have space for 4 extra people. It's me, my husband, and his niece and nephew who live with us. I'm also pregnant with twins, and I honestly don't feel like messing up everyone's comfort to accommodate her and her kids. I didn't tell her this, but I was very firm with my answer, which made her pissed, and she started calling me a horrible sister, and how I've never been there when she needs me. Meanwhile, I was literally on the phone with her for 3 hours, hearing her talk about this situation. She started telling me if the situation was reversed, she would have immediately let me stay with her, which I find funny, because she doesn't know one thing about my marriage or my life. When she was done with her rant, she told me that she didn't want to hear from me, and I told her okay and hung up. This happened about 2 days ago, and many of her friends have been messaging me and telling me how I'm a horrible sister and some other things. Am I the a-hole here? Fandom Lover says, not the a-hole. You can't afford to take her in, and since her friends are all bold enough to contact you, tell them they can take her in. Siblings or not, you have to take care of your own situation, and your sister's in a bind, but you have priorities. Depending on the state you live in, infidelity is illegal. Your sister has options despite her situation. Even if you're not in a state with those laws, if she files for divorce and has hard evidence of infidelity, she can get a hefty alimony and child support arrangement alongside the house and car, if they have one. It sucks, but she's an adult and has to deal with her situation as best she can, rather than relying on someone else and putting herself in an even worse situation. Because, let's be honest, if she and her kids move in with you, I doubt she'd contribute much of anything, since she has no income source. Jung Lockout 222 says, not the a-hole. Y'all aren't close and you already have a full house. You would be taking on financial responsibility for her and her children, and that isn't fair to you or your family, and you don't need the added stress being pregnant with twins. That is a huge financial responsibility in itself. Plus, your husband would have to be okay with this also. How does he feel about it? She needs to contact a divorce attorney and kick the husband out of the house since he is the cheater. She shouldn't have to leave her home with her children. I3XG says, not the a-hole. She actually needs to stay in her house and divorce him. He needs to leave the house so she will be able to continue to care for her kids there. She needs to talk to a lawyer to figure out what she needs to do.